All right, so here we go.
Oh,
Alrighty. Welcome back. Tonight, is fighting ruining your relationship? Is there a side of the Epstein saga that actually matters to you and your family? We'll also be speaking with a real-life social justice warrior who has agreed to answer our questions. And Anthony promises to be nice. All that and more tonight on the Unframe of Mind show.
Phobismist. You're listening to Unframe of Mind show, the place to have the most mind-stretching, unprotected, intellectual intercourse of your life. Your hosts battle the forces of evil by lobbing fiery balls of truth, reason, and evidence over safe room walls.
Alrighty, and
I think I need to put sticky notes on the keyboard. That way you know which one to press for the intro video.
Yeah, this is probably true.
We've been doing this for how long?
You shut up. gives me trouble all the time. Anyway, so I'd like to welcome y'all back to the Unframe of Mind show.
Welcome.
Where we have uncomfortable conversations without a condom. I'm your host, Daniel Wagner.
Anthony Trawick.
Hey, what's up, Anthony?
How you been, man?
It's been a long week, isn't it?
You have no idea.
Well, I might have a little idea.
Yeah.
I know it's been a long week for me as well. It's nonstop, just busy, and more busy.
Yeah.
Like I don't even know what to do with all the extra crap I've got going on. I was like, man, I may have to cancel Wednesday's show. I've got so much going on, but I didn't.
So where are you at with the building right now?
Oh, I've got,
you guys...
for those of you who don't know, I've got a building I've been working on, transferring over. Somebody gave away a free shed, or they called it a shed, but it was actually more like a shop. It was fully finished inside with drywall and outlets and everything. So I've got to transport this thing back to my house in about 3 different phases.
So let me ask you, are we thinking possibly
No, I
studio?
let me get it here, figure out what I can actually do with it, because I've also got other pressing issues around the house that have to be dealt with. Like
we'll put a vote on Facebook.
Like my shit everywhere around the house. You know, it's not fair when Facebook can outvote my family of 6 that is getting tired of my shit. At any rate, so today we actually have a special guest to join us that's going to be here to kind of participate in the conversation. And I think it'll be the first time we've had a live guest for the streams, so we're hoping everything goes smooth and my computer can stay caught up and whatnot. So I'd like to introduce our real life social justice warrior by the name of Agatha. Welcome to the show.
Welcome.
hi, hi. Thanks for having me.
Hey,
Absolutely.
What's going on? We decided, you know, if we're gonna have uncomfortable conversations without a condom, we might as well go ahead and expand our horizons. Seems like the majority of the people we get on the show tend to be pretty much in alignment with our views.
Political views, religious.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know about religious views.
No. I mean, but yeah, I mean, I tend to be the atheist anarchist of the group, and he's the Christian conservative of our little duo. So,
Wow.
Yeah. So, I'll tell you what. Let me have you tell the audience a little bit about yourself before we get started, and then we'll jump into our phobismist section, and I'll explain what that is here in a bit.
Okay, well, my name is Hogatha. I'm 39 years old. I'm a misgendered female. I'm also a lesbian, a vegan, and an intersectional feminist.
All right. Well, that's quite a bucket of adjectives that I have not had the pleasure of interacting with. If that makes any sense.
And I go by she or her.
She or her. Okay.
She or her. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So you're transgender, and you've been. How long have you been transgender?
That's misgendered. I was misgendered at birth as a male.
Sorry. You just said that. I'm not listening very well, am I?
Okay.
Sorry about that. So what's that mean, misgendered? What does that mean? Can you explain a little bit about?
That means when I was born, the doctor thought I was a male, but I'm really a female. So I lived most of my life as a male until near the death of my grandparents, and then I went ahead and decided to be myself, and then decided to be female.
Oh, right on. Okay. So, all right. Well, I'll tell you what, before we jump into the questions that our Facebook audience had for you, let me go ahead and kick off the show with our phobismist section. Now, for those of you who don't know, the phobismist is a term that I came up with that it's a mixture of phobism and ist. It seems to be all those terms that, you know, has been flung around from time to time today, and I've created a profession out of it. So our job today, and maybe you can help us out with this, Miss Agatha, is to tell people why they should be offended by the things that we're going to bring up. I can't hardly talk. Anyway, So for example, we had a bowl of fruit in the past. So we had
Green tea.
yeah, we had green tea. You know, we had to
Had a
explain to
pineapple.
people why that's offensive. You know, we just want to be ahead of the curve, explaining to everybody why everything is offensive. So tonight, I'll tell you what. Let me run the intro. All right, and on tonight's episode of The Phobismist, we're going to explain to you why you should be offended by feminine products versus men's products. Specifically toiletries, I think, because I don't know if you've noticed this, and tell me if this has been your experience as well. When you go and look in the store, there is a vast array of women's products to choose from, you know, but when it comes to the men's section, it's like you get a little postage stamp area of Walmart, and that's pretty much all you get to work with. That's pretty offensive, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I agree, but, I've had this experience where I wanted to get something to wash my genitals with. I had an infection, and I went to the dollar store, and they had feminine cleansing products for the genitals, but they didn't have any for non-binary individuals. So I didn't understand, and I was afraid to go and buy the feminine products. I thought they would look at me and go, well, this isn't for you. So I just think, just across the board, they should have just non-binary for everybody.
Oh wait, so I'm sitting here getting offended that there's not enough men's products in their selection.
But she's getting offended at the fact that there's non-binary products.
No non-binary products
whatsoever.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess I can understand where that would be offensive. Like, what would that even look like? What would be different for you to use? Like, how would the products need to be different then for you to use them?
Well, if you notice, if you go, a lot of times you'll go into, like, say, deodorant or antiperspirant, and you'll see, like, Axe or Old Spice or Mitchum, things that are, for men. Or you go to see Secret or Dove or other things like that, and that's made for women. I mean, what about us non-binary people who fall in the middle?
All right. So I see Charlotte says it echoes when she talks. Now, I don't know what to do about that. Apparently, you have an echo when you're talking. I'm not really sure what to do about that. I don't.
Yeah, it's not echoing in my ear either
They did
anymore.
the same thing with Ricky. I noticed when we had
Yeah,
him
I don't
on.
think it's on your end. I think it's on my end. I'm just not sure how to fix that. Is the problem?
Okay.
The only thing I can think of is to plug your voice coming in directly into my because I've got you feeding into the mixer board, and then the mixer board takes the sound. Well, somebody said it stopped echoing for him. It's probably because you're not talking. I noticed it on the intro too. When I roll it, it has an additional echo to it. I think it's because of the way I've got it set up.
I think what we need to do is probably next week or over the weekend. I'll
a
call
test.
you. Yeah, I'll do
And
Skype
figure
with
out
you, and we'll
what we
find
can
out
do.
what's going on.
Okay, so we'll just have to deal with it for tonight, and I apologize for that. We're still working on getting our setup fine-tuned to include guests on these live shows, so apologize.
It's a
apology
learning
for that.
experience
Yeah,
all the way
I'm
around.
telling you, it's always something. It's always something. Anyway, so before we get into our main topics, I actually had a couple questions that came from our Facebook group. If you haven't joined our Unframed Minds Facebook group, come on out and check out what we got going on. It's quite an experience. There's a whole bunch of different varying viewpoints, a whole bunch of different ideas. Some that are risque, some that are fun, some that are real serious. So it's different than your normal siloed Republican versus Democrat type pages. It's a lot of fun. So yeah, feel free to come out and join us. But anyway, let me start with this question here. Pam Jones asks, I would like to know where they get where do you get your ideas from? Family, college? She just doesn't believe that people are born hardcore SJWs. Basically, she wants to know why. Like, where do you get your ideas from and why? I'll just leave it there.
I think it's from just probably being hurt and abused and bullied your whole life. You just you don't want to see, people who are vulnerable to be picked on and stuff. So I think that's where people like myself come in, and we stand up for the weak and vulnerable. And, there tends to be like a mob mentality with people who all kind of think alike, and then they attack the ones that, are different and, are weaker than them. And that's kind of where I come from.
Wait, hold on. So you mean, because I hear this all the time. Somebody says, what is a SJW? An SJW is commonly known as a social justice warrior. They tend to be more on the left or liberal side of the political spectrum. A lot of times, farther left than
leaning.
Yeah, more progressives than classic liberals. Is that correct?
Yes, I agree.
Okay,
I'll agree with that.
So you mentioned something about a group or a mob of people attacking an individual, and you see that as a problem. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, I received that a lot when I was a child, and I'm growing up, and I just don't like it. And I figure if I'm old enough and, I have a big enough voice, I can stand up for others as well to make sure, history doesn't repeat itself with somebody else.
So let me just ask you a question. So in the news recently, we've been seeing politicians, obviously from the Democratic side, calling to, I guess, basically call out Trump supporters in public. And in a sense, that's more of a mob style type of aggression. Would you at least agree to that, coming from the same side as which most social justice warriors are coming from? I mean,
I don't necessarily believe that we should be, preaching to harm others, but
right.
But when people get, they get scared, and when they hear that there's Nazis, and white supremacists everywhere, I mean, it's almost it's your duty to extinguish that.
Wait,
So,
whoa! What do you mean? Sorry to interrupt. What do you mean?
yeah.
What do you mean by extinguish? What's that mean?
Well, I mean, I think nobody would think that being a Nazi or being a white supremacist is something that's good for everybody. So, I mean, I don't know. It's like a poison or a cancer that needs to be eradicated.
How big would you say that population of like Nazis or white supremacists in the United States currently?
Oh, I see it all the time on television. I mean, it's just talked about constantly. So, I mean, I don't, I just can't sit idly and act like nothing's going on.
No, I mean away from the news. Do you physically
Yeah,
see
I've got
that
a
in
couple
person, or? I mean, from where I come from, I don't see it. I mean, I see people all the time, and of course, what we do, and especially I do a lot of charity work, so I interact
Right.
with so many people. I just don't see that narrative that you hear on the news. I just don't. So
But
I'm just trying to
I mean,
understand.
could that be because you're a cisgendered white man?
Mm,
Maybe you don't see it, or you're not the target of it. I mean, I get it. I ride the public bus, and people to this day will just stare at me and, and sneer at me and just like giggle and stuff. And I just know that they're making fun of me. And so, that puts you in fear. So I see it as that.
I've
And I
got a
don't
lot of
know if
I've
they're
got a lot of
Nazis or white.
questions. I've got a lot of questions. I'm still hung up on the word extinguish. Like, what did you mean by that exactly?
I guess putting
Well,
out
to
the
get rid of
flame or putting out the problem.
Nazism. It's evil. I mean, I think we could all agree on we should extinguish evil.
Sure. I guess I'm looking for the actual logistics. Like, what do you mean by extinguish? Do you mean like just um, defeat the ideology with better arguments, or do you mean actually kill them?
Well, no, ideally, yeah, with arguments, but how long do you argue? I mean, at some point, I mean, look at what's happening in China. Sometimes you just got to get out there and you got to protest and, and just set yourself in an airport, until people hear you and give you what you want. I mean, like, what's the alternative? Just to roll over and just give up?
Okay. That's I'm okay. I'm still like okay. So you said arguing with people only goes so far, and then you got to stand up and protest. And what if
Yes.
protesting doesn't work? Is there a next step, or do you just hope that works?
Well, see, what happens is what they do is while you're protesting, they'll just, just happen to get in your way. They just stand in your way. They walk across your path. They take their time. They're just being a nuisance during your protest. And then I don't know and then somebody bumps into another person, and then they get mad, and then they push somebody else, and then there's a fist thrown, and things do get out of hand. But I just don't understand if the SJWs, liberals and progressives are protesting and they want their voices heard. I don't understand why people are out there trying to drown out their protest. Like they're asking for trouble, and I don't get it.
Oh, asking for trouble. Like, what do you mean? What do you mean trouble?
Just by being there. I mean, you're there
We're
to
talking.
quiet us. I mean, that's the fascist part of it. They want to shut us up.
Oh yeah, I understand that. Yeah. I'm kind of speechless. I'm just kind of because the reason I'm speechless because there's been a number of incidents where say right-leaning individuals will get up and try to give a speech, and they're shut down
Ben
by
Shapiro
groups
being
like
one of them,
Antifa. Milo Yiannopoulos comes to mind.
Mm-hmm.
Ben Shapiro comes to mind, and he's shut down by people rioting and causing actually lighting fires and literal fascist type activities.
Well, that's terrible. I mean, I would never condone, burning a property or anything. That's terrible. People have jobs that they need to go to, and you shouldn't be doing that. But I mean, you can't be responsible for every, incident. Just like I'm sure, the woman who got, run down in Charlottesville by that white supremacist. I mean, I'm sure the right doesn't want to take responsibility for that person. So, just things happen.
Things happen. That's interesting. There's some comments coming from the comments. We haven't even got to your next question, but there's some comments coming from the comments section, and they made an interesting point. I don't know how this is supposed to work because I've never done the gender pronouns thing with anybody.
Yes.
You actually told us your pronouns are he, her, or she, her.
Yes.
Am I supposed to tell you what mine are, or volunteer that information, or are you supposed to ask, or what's the etiquette around that?
Well, if you don't think it's important, I will go according to what you present as.
Oh, so you would just
you present as a male to me.
So you would literally assume my gender.
Yes, I would, because you didn't tell me what your pronouns were, so I just have to assume at that moment. I mean, it's polite to introduce yourself and give the pronouns, and if you don't, then you'll be called what you're presenting as.
Well, okay, maybe you can shed some light on this. Why is it then on social media and stuff when people are shouted down for assuming someone else's gender, when basically what you just said was it puts the onus is on you for not asking, or you just assumed until I say otherwise.
Well, because if you're on social media, you just see a picture. You don't really know if it's them or not. But I mean, if you're talking to someone on video or in person, and if they don't, during the conversation introduce themselves with their pronouns, I personally think it's okay to just go by the way they appear. And you appear to be, the social construct of a male.
The social construct.
So
my beard, let's say I'm just trying to put this together.
You a
in my mind.
caveman.
I'm trying to put this together in my mind. I really am. So I've got a beard, I've got a mustache, I got a deep voice, but let's say I come on this stream and I start talking like this, and I'm real soft spoken, and I have kind of a feminine voice. Would you assume based on my looks or based on the way I'm talking or interacting? How would you make that judgment then? Would you just have to ask?
I would still, I guess, the rules haven't really been set in stone, have they? Because me personally, I would assume, because you don't tell me your pronouns from the beginning, that it's really not an issue for you. I mean, because the people that I know, they'll, introduce themselves and give, he, him, her, she, they pronouns. So I just assumed that you didn't work within that realm, that you were, I just, assumed that you were a male because you didn't introduce yourself and tell me your pronouns.
Interesting.
So
I just would think that it would be obvious. I don't know.
I guess it'd be interesting to have an actual etiquette guide. Maybe that's something you could write.
Yeah.
Heck, you could publish it to our website if you like.
We're all learning every day, including myself. Sometimes I've called a group of people guys, or and maybe they're not all guys,
Right.
So so you say them instead of hey you guys. You say hey them over there or whatever.
This is kind of interesting for me because this is a lot of information that you would hear about on the internet as far as pronouns and gender and things of that nature. But then when you actually physically talk to somebody and you kind of get in depth with it, it's confusing. I'll be honest with you. It's a little confusing. I'm still trying to understand it, Yeah. But the one thing that I noticed is that you assumed my race. So I guess, how does that, what is an actual white person? Is that coming from just like European kind of standpoint, or how does that work? I was just kind of wondering.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, I don't know your ethnicity.
Right.
I don't. Like I said, we're all learning every day.
Right.
And I'm really sorry if I've I'm sorry if I did, maybe you're not white. I
No,
don't
no,
know.
no,
You could
you're
be
fine.
Hispanic.
There's no reasons to apologize. I'm just trying to understand,
Yeah.
like, what, like,
Yeah.
I guess the one thing I learned growing up is you should never assume anything because it'll get you in trouble more times than not. So,
I don't know. There's a certain amount of things you should be able to assume.
well, to an extent, without
mean-
getting in trouble,
I mean,
but
'cause we do it all the time. I mean, just as we're walking down the road and we see people walking by, we kind of make like flash judgments
we
and
do,
assumptions,
right? Yeah.
without even thinking about it.
Yeah.
Like how do you
Right,
like?
yeah.
I mean, I understand that maybe some of this stuff. So I still trying to wrap my mind around the idea of it being a social construct, given that there's all this scientific. I don't know. I don't want to get into that more. I want to
That's
actually
another show for another day.
Yeah. I want to get to the main topic. So let me ask you these couple more questions here. Ryan Milford from the Facebook group asked, "Where do you stand on men not getting treated equally to women in court for divorce and custody? Like as far as equality in the courts, is that something that
Well,
you are aware of, or?"
oh yeah, I'm aware of it. No, and and you might be shocked. I agree. I mean, I think a lot of times the female partner in the relationship does tend to get preferential treatment. I agree with that. But I also think it's historic. Typically, the masculine partner of the relationship went out and worked and they did everything. So the children were at home mostly with the mothers and on their side constantly. And a lot of times the children tend to favor the mothers or feel more comfortable. And I think we can revamp the court systems. And the thing is, in today's day and age, I mean, I've known gay men who have no custody of their children or could see them, or trans women who have fathered children. And so, yeah, I agree that I think we can do something about the family law system in this country.
Well, it's good to know that we kind of stand probably on the same page with that. So that's good to know.
Right on. See,
Yeah.
when we have these conversations, we find that we actually do find some common ground every now and again.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I
Exactly.
think that we have to get past the shouting, the people that we often see on TV or on the news, and when it comes to social justice warriors, that is if we can actually just sit down and have a conversation, we might actually learn a lot more than what we did before we actually engage in that conversation, which is good because for me it kind of opens my eyes to things. So the next time I'm approached with something like this, I might have a little bit more information to kind of go off of. So it's good. It's a healthy conversation.
Yeah.
You got to have dialogue.
All right. Well,
Yeah, and I think people are very passionate about these things, and we've kind of got to tone it down a little bit, maybe.
Yeah.
I know
agree.
you were you mentioned being nervous about this before, but we do have some live interaction and stuff, and there's there's some positivity coming your way from the Facebook page. Somebody said,
Oh, okay.
yeah, Laura Lee says Agatha is so brave. I think she
Oh,
misspelled your
thank
name,
you.
so that's it might be, I don't know if are you offended when people misspell your name?
No, that's okay. I mean,
okay.
I'm
happens.
not that
Okay,
petty.
good. So Ashley Heberber, I'm sorry, Ashley, I just butchered your last name. How do you know if you have a clitoral tunnel? What's the difference between a clitoral tunnel and an extra small schwink? I'm sorry, that was a funny word to me.
Yeah, that's just something. That's somebody who they're familiar with me. Um, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that. That's kind of personal. I mean, it's such a big forum that they would say that.
So
It's
would
just
you
she's talking about my genitals.
prefer
Um,
she DM'd you and had a private conversation about something like this?
That would seem more appropriate.
Yeah. You crossed
Yeah,
the line,
I-
Ashley.
yeah.
Calm down, Ashley.
Yeah.
Great. You just offended our guest on our own show.
Well, I mean, I do have personal things. I let certain people into my personal life online, and I think I get a lot of trolls, and I think she probably is one of them.
All right.
Well, and it's something we kind of talked about before the show started is that, you were a little nervous about, what some people would say and given the way that you look and so forth. And the one thing that we always tell our audience, that's not what we're about. That's not what, we want people to do. We just want people to hear the conversation and kind of form their own opinions. But to be disrespectful is something we don't tolerate. Never have, never will. So just
But-
always know that if you ever come on, hopefully people are going to be respectful. That's what we at least like to see. So,
Well, there are people who actually like the way I look, and I often get messages saying how beautiful and stunning and brave I am.
Yeah, that's
So
what we
yeah,
read in the
I mean,
that's what we read in the comments.
yeah.
Did you have anything to follow up
Yeah,
with
I
that?
got
Or
another question here. Just trying to. Somebody's asked me other questions on other forums here. Anyway, so basically the question is, Cora asks, how do you feel about the fact that everyone is privileged?
I'm sorry. Who's privileged?
It just that's how the question was asked. How do you feel about the fact that quote unquote everyone is privileged? I guess
Well, I
go ahead.
to an extent, I believe everybody who's actually on American soil is privileged. I mean, they are. I mean, America is, a free country. But there are some people who have more privileges than other. I mean, and I can't ignore that. So I don't know specifically what she wants to know.
I'm not really sure. Maybe she's talking about white privilege or male privilege and those kinds of names that are called all the time. What do you feel about those particular subjects?
Well, I mean, I do think that I mean, I can't deny that there isn't a white privilege. I mean, my girlfriend, Marquina, she's African American, and we go out to restaurants and stuff, and people automatically want to serve me first, or they want to talk to me first, or, and it's something I've recognized. And we can't ignore that the wealth of this country and power is in the hands of white men. I mean, that being wealthy and just being a powerful man, gives you some kind of privilege. So I mean, I can't ignore that.
so did that white privilege still, I guess, was in play back when Obama was in office, would you say? Given that he was a
Oh,
black man
what?
in a political power?
Well, no, he's part of just the privilege of being an American. I mean,
Right.
he's, and not to mention he is half white. I mean, I don't know if that bought him any privilege at all. But I mean, I just, and some say he was even just placed there as president just, to expose the racism of what we're seeing today. But, there's all kinds of theories. But he is a wealthy man. But, at some point, if he took off his suit and he went in Compton and went shopping for some basketball shoes, he probably would not be, get the same privileges he would as if he lived in the White House wearing a suit. I mean, we only see him as the president, but if he wasn't wearing the suit and stuff, how would he be treated differently?
It's a good question. I guess it depends on what neighborhood you come up in. I would imagine that even if you are, regardless of what color you are, I imagine that you have certain privileges in some locations, in some scenarios, and some environments, and some groups. I just don't know that the male patriarchy is necessarily at the top of the chain. I mean, I guess we can.
Right. I mean, but I will acknowledge just being an American and honestly, even being an undocumented immigrant also buys you a privilege for being here as well. I mean, I'll say that. I agree with that.
So, calling somebody's privilege out or having them acknowledge their privilege, what's the point in that? I mean, what would be solved by doing that?
Well, I think it's kind of a reminder. Some of us are, on different positions on the totem pole, you know, and some of us are at the top, some of us are in the middle, some of us at the bottom. And I think, when people, maybe at the top who get a little lippy and a little mouthy and a little preachy, maybe they need to be told, you need to remember your position. You have it better than others. So maybe you should just be quiet. I think that, to me, that's what that means.
So
Telling people
is
that's
having
privilege.
is having a privileged position this like does that disqualify them from having an opinion on something? Because that's
Well,
kind of what it seems like. It's almost like you basically, well, you're a cisgendered white male, so you might as well just shut up on this topic because you don't know what you're talking about. Does that?
well, it makes me wonder what a cisgendered white male from the Midwest, what would they have in common or know what a transsexual in West Hollywood goes through? I mean, really, I mean, I don't understand. I mean, I don't see anything being taken away from the white man. I don't see that from the straight cisgendered white male. I don't see by giving LGBT people their rights and what they want, I don't see how it diminishes anybody else. So
So
I don't see why they even have anything to say about it.
So let me follow up with that. So what is it in that community, the LBGT community, that doesn't have that they're continuously just fighting for? Like what are some of the privileges, I guess we would say, or some of the things that they don't have it that they're trying to fight for?
Well, one of the privileges are like privilege of visibility. It's like when I go out, people, look at me like I'm some kind of freak. And I don't deserve that. I mean, I don't know why they don't just look the other way. Or, it's like everybody feels like it's their right or they're entitled or it's their job to shame me or to make me
Well,
feel
to
uncomfortable. And I don't understand that.
to be fair, if you're wearing such an extraordinary color hair,
I'd look at you.
I mean, aren't you kind of calling attention to yourself? Aren't you kind of asking for people to look at you by doing that?
Yeah, but just like you wear your beard, I mean, it's a longer than normal beard. Do people look at you for that, or
Oh
do
yeah,
they
sure,
probably
sure.
admire your beard, don't they?
I'm
Oh
fucking
yeah.
jealous. I can't grow a beard, and I'm 38 years old.
Right,
It
right,
just
yeah.
wasn't
I
in the
mean,
deck of
people
cards for
admire
me.
your oddity.
Well,
People
well,
admire your
well,
oddity.
right, but
People
at the same time,
people make fun of mine.
I'm not sitting here complaining that people are looking at it though.
Yeah,
I grow it out and
right.
I recognize the attention it's going to bring and I'm okay with it. Some people like it,
Because
some
it's
people hate
positive.
it. It doesn't, I don't complain that people are paying attention to it because that's kind of what it's for anyway on some level.
Well, you have to
Oh,
remember, if she's got pink hair, that's not normal. Meaning that the typical colors in hair that you see is blonde, brunette, and redheads. So when you see somebody with pink hair, obviously that's going to grab your attention. I don't think that it's necessarily anybody probably staring at you or thinking ugly thoughts. I just think that it's, oh hey, that's something you normally don't see.
Right,
I mean,
right.
that's what I would assume.
Is it
so-
possible then that maybe when people are looking at you that you're assuming what their thoughts are, that maybe you're projecting your past abuses on the person that's looking at you and just assuming what they're thinking when maybe they might just be looking at you because it's out of the ordinary? I mean, you do
Well, it
acknowledge
might be a bit of both.
you do acknowledge at least that you are outside of the ordinary when it comes to your looks, yes?
Well, I mean, I know many people with colored hair. I mean,
Right.
I live in Southern California, and it's, you go down to the corner store and the McDonald's worker has blue hair or purple hair. And it's like, it's just not an oddity really anymore. But, I ride public transit. When I get on the bus, I mean, I could see people looking at me. I mean, I'm not stupid. I
Right.
mean, they're smiling, they're turning their heads. I've seen people take pictures of me with their cell phones and, having conversations privately amongst themselves. I know what I'm seeing. I mean, I don't do drugs or anything. I know what's happening.
So you mentioned earlier, and you don't have to answer this if you don't like to, but you mentioned
Okay.
from years past of abuse. What type of abuse did you encounter growing up? Like I said, you don't have to answer that. Just kind of want to maybe get some background on that.
Well, because like, I said I was misgendered. I always
Right.
I always felt like a female. I always knew I was female. So, and I'm a fairly large person. So, like I was in high school, I was already 6'2", almost 200 pounds. And, and all the boys making fun of me, calling me a sissy, calling me the F word. I don't know if I could say it. You
Yeah,
know
you
what
can
it
say
is.
anything you want on
Um,
here.
I'm sorry.
You can say anything you want.
Okay, calling me a faggot.
Oh, except for that.
And,
Except for that. I'm just kidding. I'm
We're
just
just
kidding.
teasing.
or and things like that. And it's like, I just shunned at school. I didn't have a whole lot of friends. And and I mean, I think it all started back. My mother died when I was 18 months old, and
Mhm.
lived with my grandparents, so I was sort of around older people my whole life. And so it just really, I just got made fun of a lot, that's all.
So where was your dad in the picture in all of this? I haven't heard anything
I
about him.
Yeah, I don't know my father. My mother didn't even know my father.
Okay.
Well, I got a question for you that came in the chats here. Ashley asked if she actually says you're a racist, that you hate the white race, and you called her a dirty slut because she looks like Melania Trump's twin. Is that true? Or is this person just making stuff up right now?
No, she's making it up. She's totally making that up.
So,
If I even got, I would never even get in a conversation like that with some Melania Trump's twin. I don't
it
know.
sounds like a good thing. I mean, Melania's pretty hot.
That's one
She's,
way to put it.
she's an attractive lady. Yeah.
So let me ask you this, and I'm pretty sure I know where this is going to go. But what is your opinion of the Trump administration currently that you see going on outside of race, outside? Basically, do you think that he's actually doing a good job for this country from an economical standpoint? Do you think that he's delivering on his promises? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I just heard today on TV that we're looking at a recession. I mean,
Global
I don't know
recession,
what
yeah.
a global recession
Hmm.
is it?
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
what they
I
were
know,
discussing.
United States is a big player in that. I'm assuming,
Right.
I mean, we can't turn around and say, we run the place and we're the biggest and baddest dog on the block, and then turn around and then not take responsibility for, a global recession. I
Right.
mean,
Do you,
that would be kind of, I don't know.
do you
But
think that I mean,
I don't.
for a man that doesn't really have any politics, experience, do you think that he's done all right for his first term, or, I mean, where do you see there might be some room, room for improvement for him and his administration?
And we're talking economics and foreign
Just
affairs, right?
no, just I mean, as a general, as a president, I'm wanting to stay away from certain things. I want to keep this when it comes down to the political, position itself. Do you think that he's running the country in the best direction that he thinks it's going for the American people?
Well, well, I can't say no to that question now, can I? I mean, yes, I think he thinks what he's doing is best for America and himself. I mean,
Well,
he's a businessman, so of course
good
he'd love
answer.
to be
Good
focused
answer.
on business now, wouldn't he?
I guess what I'm trying to get at is I'm trying to get away from what the media tells us about Trump. This would have been asked, if this was, a Democrat in office. And the reason why is
Right.
because I want to get away from the racism, and I want to focus in on our country as a whole in the direction that it needs to go. And if there's some improvements that we need to make along the lines. So for me, is I'm just trying to separate the two and make this
Yeah.
a conversation about what is in the best interest of our country, if that makes sense.
I I see that. I guess where I come from is I wonder if all the supposed prosperity we're getting and what we're gonna get, is that really worth the social consequence of what we're living through? I mean, if half the country thinks he's racist and homophobic and transphobic, I mean, is it really worth it that you have an extra $5 in your pocket, maybe at the end of the month? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how to weigh that because, when there are people who are in fear of their lives every day, I mean, what difference does it make if they have a job?
You know what? It's
I mean,
interesting because we just had a guest on the show, Ricky Roberts, and pretty gay conservative. He was, one of the original members of the Walk Away movement. And so it's
right,
interesting to talk to a gay conservative and getting their points of views that are far different than somebody on the left. So
right.
it's obviously that split right down the middle, and I don't know if it's. Would you say basically it's where you come from and what you're exposed to, Daniel, as far as which way you want to lean?
Man, I think that's a deep question. It's a deep question, man. I think it's got a lot to do with where you come up, where you come, who your
Right.
social group is. I mean, I think that's same reason a lot of people believe in the religions they believe in. It has to do with the way they were brought up, the religion they were exposed to.
Right.
Political beliefs, I think, are the same way. There's even been studies to show that there's actually some kind of a genetic component to whether or not you end up leaning more toward the left or the right, in general political terms. So is that something you've heard before, Hogatha?
Or have you at least
Um,
talked to anybody that's from the LBGT community that is also conservative, or is that something that you just haven't run into?
I've run into them. There was that walkaway group. They did a town hall in West Hollywood. I was gonna go there, but just to see it and maybe ask some, questions and stuff. But I was afraid of, the like. I just didn't trust that there wouldn't be anybody there who was, too radical on the right.
Right.
You know, I was afraid to go.
Do you have any friends that are
But
conservatives? Just out of curiosity.
um, No, I really don't. My grandparents were kind of conservative, but
Right.
they just stayed at home, and we're just simple people. But no, I really don't.
Have you ever, I mean, actually had conversations or thought about being friends with anybody that is conservative with different viewpoints?
I find it very hard to talk to a conservative who just isn't worshiping Donald Trump. I mean, it's like they're constantly, preaching him and beating the war drums for him. And it's like, I'd rather, can't we talk about something other than him?
Right.
No. No, all
We're going to
conversations.
do the whole show
Yeah,
on
yeah.
Donald Trump.
Yeah, all conversations start with Trump, and then we just branch out from there. And where you land, you land. That's pretty much how we do it around here. It's
Well,
kind
'cause
of
it can be kind of scary to some people, because he is kind of the face of. A lot of people see him as Hitler. A lot of people see him as, an evil person, and so it is kind of hard to have a conversation about such a figure like that.
like I'm not even
I don't
exaggerating.
know.
I'm not even exaggerating. Like I went to Wendy's the other day, and when I pulled up to the drive-thru, the dude was like, "Hey, what do you think about Trump? Can I take your order?" It was like every conversation starts right there. It's so weird.
And where are you guys? Or where are you guys from?
Oh, we're from a Nashville area, Tennessee.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that would. You would never see that here ever. I mean, I live about an hour from Los Angeles, and I think maybe since Trump has been president, I've seen one Trump sticker on a car. That's it. I mean, you just don't see that. It's very, very, very blue here. I
So
mean,
our friend Dia from her she has her own YouTube channel. She's been a frequent guest on the show. She brought up that money is important to families. It makes a vast difference. I guess referring to your earlier point. Do you want to say something to that or? Just,
well, yeah, I mean, but not all families are the same. I mean, I have people that I call family that don't have children, and we have a gay community, and we consider ourselves a family. And if we feel unsafe to do anything or go anywhere, I mean, what difference does it make how much our job pays us or whatever? We just don't have the quality of life that we would like.
So just a quick question.
yeah, we're gonna have to wrap to the next segment.
Yeah. Just a quick question. Do you think that the term Nazi, white supremacist, and Hitler is thrown around too much? And do you think that maybe it's kind of misused? I personally think that it's a slap in the face to Holocaust survivors when people start throwing that word around and they're not really educated on the different history points in which people have gone through. So for me, I think people kind of loosely throw those words around, and I think that it's not really cool to do. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'll say I will concede that I do think that word to a Nazi. I think people use it just as the ultimate evil. They don't. I don't think they really believe that Donald Trump is a Nazi. I mean,
Right.
It's a political party. I mean, everybody knows he's not technically a Nazi, but they just see the rhetoric and the fanfare that this man gets, and they just have images of Nazi Germany and Adolf Hitler, and so they're trying to compare it to something, and that's what they compare it to, and whether they think he's really, really a political Nazi. I don't think so. I think it's like a name. It's name calling.
Yeah, that is name calling. It's kind of like a low level political discourse when you invoke Godwin's law, which is the first person to mention Hitler automatically loses the discussion. It's like
Right.
it just seems like how do you argue with somebody that's sitting there calling you a Nazi? Like how do you actually have a conversation with that person? There's no way to do it.
Well, you get a lot of that
Well,
from
I think
Antifa, so.
I think once they use the word Nazi, they're at their wits' end. They're really trying to just convey to you what they really think and how strongly they feel about it.
So Trump. One last question, unless you have another one. But one last question before. Sorry,
I got a lot.
I know, but I do want to make sure we have time for our other two. I got a couple small topics I want to cover this week. But last question for me anyway is this term, Trump derangement syndrome. Are you familiar with that term? And if so, what do you feel like? Has anybody ever accused you of suffering from that?
Yes, I have been called that. I've seen it. Is it what TDR, TRD? I don't know. S. I don't know, but yes, I've seen that. People have typed it on my thing before. But to me, I think, you know what? I think it's basically like calling Trump a Nazi. Saying that I have Trump derangement, syndrome is like me calling someone a Nazi. It's like, oh, okay, so it's the name calling. It's, I mean, really, is it a real disease? I mean, let's be serious. I
Oh
mean,
no, not at all. But so you're saying it's kind of like the opposite insult to,
yeah,
hey, you're a Nazi. Oh,
or,
well, you suffer from Trump derangement syndrome, and from that point forward,
yeah.
we're no longer having an actual conversation.
I mean, I agree. At some point, the conversations do devolve into just immature name calling, and it's just, you know, I don't know. It's fault of both sides. I'll be honest, but
Well,
there are
listen.
people out here hurting.
Well, listen,
Okay.
Hogatha. So I've appreciated you being open and honest with us with
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
topic so far. I'd like to keep you on the line and you can participate in these other segments if you're interested. Is that
Okay.
okay?
Okay.
All right. So basically, there was a decide which one I want to go with. Let's start with the Epstein one because it's kind of in the news lately, and basically I wanted to bring up a side of the Epstein story that people haven't really been talking about. A side of the story that I feel like could actually be of use to families involved, like for you and your family and your children. It's the angle that basically what is it you can look out for to prevent your kids from ending up in a scenario like the sex island from Jeffrey Epstein, the Lolita Express airplane where he's having these young ladies give massages and that kind of thing. It's everybody's talking about the specifics of that case
Right.
and whether he's committed suicide or whether he's really dead or how incompetent can you be. It's like, yes, you'll hear that everywhere else. If you want that information, go somewhere else to get it. I'm more interested in things that you can actually use as our beloved audience here, and I just wanted to point out some of the things that that really make a difference in terms of how do you prevent this from happening? What are the signs to look for? That kind of thing. And before I do, there was something that I did find out through my research, and it's something to do with the terminology that's used. As far as the term, you've been hearing the term pedophilia associated with this case.
Right.
Turns out that's not exactly technically the correct term to use because pedophilia refers to prepubescent children. And from what I'm hearing, this is actually a case of as young as 14, maybe a little younger, but from 14 and up, confirmed at least, which would be the third category. Hebephilia, Hebe philia, is someone who's someone who's attracted to ages like 11 through 14. It's the early adolescents, prepubescent children. That would be on the lower end of where he was being accused of participating.
It's still sick, in my opinion. No matter how
So hebephilia and ephebophilia. Let's try that. EPHEBO philia is 15 to 19. It's late adolescence, also pubescent. It's the reason I bring this up is because when you associate the term pedophile to Jeffrey Epstein and what he was doing, it actually, in my opinion, minimizes actual pedophilia. Not saying what he did was good, but I am saying that people who are actually out there doing shit with prepubescent children, that's like we can argue about the age all we want, but I mean I don't think anybody's going to argue that sex with a 14-year-old is as bad as sex with a 5-year-old. Like there's definitely a sliding scale there. Like I would say. I'm not saying it's
You
okay.
deserve your dick cut off if
Well,
you're doing that shit to kids.
I'm not saying it's
I'm
okay.
just being honest.
I actually heard Peter Schiff talking about this on his show, and I was actually surprised he mentioned it. But he does make an interesting point: is that this age limit thing that we talk about right now is actually kind of new, because there was a time, if you think about it biologically, I'm not condoning any of this. I'm not saying it's okay, but if you think about it biologically, when women do hit their period and they do start maturing and their body starts being able to produce children, that's nature's way of saying, hey, I'm ripe and ready, I'm ready to go. So it's not like so far outside the realm of possibility that men would be attracted to it, and then therefore there would be a market for this kind of thing, which is why I think all these other people were implicated in this, involved in this.
Right.
To me it's a bridge too far, but you also got to kind of put it in context of today's modern world and how we've set this age 18 limit. Is this you? Do you want to? You look like you're kind of disgusted, or you want to say something
Well,
there?
I mean, I don't agree with adults having sex with teenagers, or I mean, I know, in Mexico, I know there's some places where people are having sex with 12-year-olds because it's legal,
Right.
in certain states and areas. But I my grandmother got married and had her first child at 14. I mean, so that is I understand that, as a maybe an old way of thinking, but I don't know if, there's any place for children or young or teenagers having sex with grown men. I don't know if that's a acceptable thing nowadays.
Well, let me draw your attention to let's see, make sure I get the right one. This is from blueview.org, talking about. Let's see. There we go. All right. So it's talking about, here we go. In socioeconomic terms, the people that are most likely to be trafficked tend to be girls in poverty, broken homes, violent neighborhoods. Unsurprisingly, they appear to be more susceptible to becoming trafficking victims, although high income and stable families, no barrier. So that's kind of one thing is these people, when they're trying to look for victims, they're gonna go to impoverished areas. They're gonna find girls that are come from broken homes. You're gonna find people who are more easily isolated. They have weak social support, that kind of thing. So if any of these things, if you don't have good connection, good communication channels open with your children, it's definitely a possibility that they could be more susceptible to being trafficked. It tends to be around the ages 14 and up, 14 to 18. It could be earlier, it could be a little bit later, but that tends to be about the right age for it. And
I mean, and I know we also have a thing with parents, don't they also? Some people are just so sick enough to where they will actually volunteer their children up.
Yeah, I've heard of that before. I think that's
Yeah.
more well known in other countries. I guess they would do that in other countries, not so much here in the United States, but then again, I could be wrong.
all right, so according to, okay, I've got this. I'll have this link in the description later on once I update everything. Endsextrafficking.az.gov has this. It's a teen sex trafficking awareness guide. It's very very well done, very well written, well researched. Might be worth checking out. Just points out a number of different stats, different tactics that are used. Such a, basically, okay, it says under federal law, the crime of human trafficking is defined as the recruitment, harboring, transportation, provision, or obtaining of a person for the purposes of commercial sex act where such an act is induced by force, fraud, or coercion, or in which the person is induced to perform such act has not attained 18 years of age. It's a $9.8 billion industry.
Wow.
It's a lot of money.
Jeez.
Vulnerable girls can be lured into prostitution and other forms of sexual exploitation using promises, psychological manipulations, provisions of drug and alcohol, and violence of threats and violence against family and friends. So, yeah. 90% of minor victims are under the control of a pimp. So there's a guy controlling it, or girl pimp, I guess. We don't want to assume his gender, do we?
And I think this is something that all parents ought to look over, especially if you've got little girls, such as myself, So this is definitely good information to have, and just to kind of educate yourself.
Yeah.
on it.
That's why I wanted to bring it up, because this is a side that I haven't heard anybody else talking about in terms of this. Is the how do you prevent this from happening? Like
Right.
how did this happen exactly? How was he able to get away with this, aside from having tons of money and influence and power, and probably a ton of blackmail videos over his victims?
I heard recently there was a woman involved too. She had her helicopter license, and she would, go on the mainland and pick up people and bring them down over to the island and stuff.
Right.
Maybe she was like his pimp and recruiter.
And I definitely wanted to bring this up because it seems like this is a topic that the right and the left can't agree on. Like if we don't agree on anything else, we can at least agree on this particular topic. So how does it happen? The trafficker will use psychological manipulation physical violence and rape to make the victim feel trapped and powerless. The pimp may also threaten to harm the victim's family or close friends as a way to maintain control. The pimp may take modeling photos and suggestive videos and use them to advertise the victim for sexual services online. They'll use social media. A lot of these people, they look like regular average people. I mean, there's no way to like see somebody on the street and be like, oh, that guy's definitely, he's definitely into sex trafficking. That's, nobody's going to be that blatant and obvious about it. So it's something that, most importantly, you're going to need to make sure to keep lines of communication open with your children. Make sure to educate them about the possibility that this could happen, that this is a very real thing. It's scary. It's a very real thing. It's out there. There are people that are willing to do this, that if you feel uncomfortable or you feel threatened, don't hesitate to scream. And the kids that are educated are going to be less likely to be targeted. The kids that are obviously have a close relationship with their parents, they don't just look like, fresh prey out for the kill.
Yep.
So that's something that's, it's pretty obvious when you can tell somebody doesn't have good social support. So ways to protect yourself from becoming a victim. First of all, you develop good social media habits. Maintain your friendships and be a true friend. Don't trust people you meet online. Stay in school. Work to keep good relationships with your family. Okay, stay in school except for when you're around pedophile teachers, which, as it turns out, there's actually more pedophilia in schools, in the public school system, than there's ever been in the Catholic Church. But we don't hear about that, do we? However, don't get hooked on drugs or alcohol. Don't run away from home. Don't trade sexual favors for money or something of value. We all been there, am I right? Don't accept expensive gifts from a stranger. Seek help if you are feeling depressed or angry. So that's a few little tips that you can actually use, that you're not going to hear reported on CNN or anything like that. It's something you can actually take the time to connect with your children and educate them on what's going on, because they, like my kids have even asked, who's this Epstein guy? Why is this such a big deal? Well, here's what's going on, honey. Like this is what they caught him doing.
What a conversation to have with your daughter.
Yeah, it's
You've
tough.
got
It's
three,
tough.
and I've got one.
Yeah,
so
it's tough, but they can handle it. I mean, kids are a lot stronger and more
resilient than you think.
Yeah, more resilient and definitely more curious than you might think. They really love talking about this kind of stuff, and any opportunity they can have to feel more of an introduction to the adult world.
But I don't think
as dark as this seems. But.
It might be dark, but if you can have that open of a conversation with your children, you've got a pretty good relationship, well established. To be able to have those kind of conversations and just say, hey, look, this is what's going on in the real world. This is what you need to be aware of. They ask why we're having this conversation. It's for their own safety. You just want the well-being for your family. Bottom line.
You got to protect your children. You have to protect them.
Right. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I've got one last subject to cover. It should take just a few minutes. This is something that I had actually heard. Dr. Jordan Peterson on his latest podcast. I was listening to the Q&A at the end of his lecture, and there was something he was talking about. They asked a question. I'll just play the audio first. Bear with me here as we make it through, but let me make sure I got everything set up here to actually play the right audio. At any rate, here we go. Hey, that's not the right button. What the hell did I just do? Oh, I see what's going on. Now I got to figure out how to use this program along with OBS to make it run smooth. That's fun. Oh, Jesus, that's the wrong one, too. I will get my shit together, I promise.
What advice would you give newlyweds?
Fight. About everything. I really mean that, man. There's things to fight about, and nothing's too small, because you got things to sort out. I hear so many people have come to me, we never fight. It's like, that's because you're cowardly. What, you got nothing to fight about? Really? You're not going to fight about how to split up the household finances, eh? You're not going to fight about that. That's not worth fighting about. You're just going to be bitter and resentful about it for 30 years, right? You're not going to fight about who's responsible for the domestic duties. You're just going to have every goddamn mealtime when people have to clean up be miserable because no one sorted it out. That's going to be the solution, right? You're not going to fight about sex. You're just going to be deprived or overloaded. You're not going to fight about how to discipline your kids because obviously you got that all taken care of, and it's not complicated in the least. It's like, you're not going to fight about whose career takes priority under what conditions. You're not going to fight about vacations, right? You're not going to fight about how you treat each other when you come home after a long day.
All right. Yes. So that was, I got a couple more clips to go from that, but it was interesting hearing him. The first advice he gives is fight. I was like, and the way he brings it up, it's like, that's kind of interesting. It's like, well, yeah, I guess I could see the need to have fights and to fight for what you want, and to, everybody says, oh, everything's got to be compromised and everything's got to be, and it's a good point. I mean,
sometimes
I don't know how you feel about that,
sometimes fighting can be a healthy conjunction or relationship, meaning that, I guess to a certain degree, and I don't mean like the physical aspect of fighting in a relationship.
Yeah, I think what he's talking about is like a non-manipulative, non-abusive fight.
Right.
Actually standing up for yourself. It's a way, like the way I pictured it when he said it is, it's a way of establishing boundaries.
Yes.
It's a way of actually being able to say, okay, I'm not willing to put up with that. This is where I'm at on this, and I will fight for that.
But I think the delivery is what is important when you have that fight or argument with, your spouse or significant other.
Yeah.
I mean, I really do think that it is. I mean, it just really is the delivery approach, because if you approach somebody very aggressively, they're going to shut down. That other person is automatically just going to shut down, or they're just going to start screaming and losing their shit. You don't want that. That's when it gets out of control.
He does address that. He does address that in there. And I don't remember if I cut that clip or not, but he does address that. It's worth a listen. I'm going to play a couple more clips here. Is there anything you want to add to that, Hogatha?
I can't hear it. So, but yeah, I believe in fighting what you believe in. Yeah.
I thought you could hear that. I'm sorry. So we'll just try to give you some context clues around what the clip was about, so that way, in case you, my apologies. Okay,
that's okay.
All right, so let's play the next clip here.
It's a fight. Like, look, if you're good at it, which you aren't, if you're good at it, then it can transform into the kind of negotiation where you're both sitting there relatively peacefully, relatively well-controlled, discussing the issues rationally. It's like, you have to bloody well be unbelievably sophisticated to manage that. It's really, really, really hard. Partly because you have to take the other person's side as well, which is another thing I would really also recommend to newlyweds, is like, don't be thinking that other person isn't you. You're stuck with them. They're you. But it's better to have the damn conflict than to live out the catastrophe over 2 decades. So, and as a clinician, I've seen this. I've seen families. Every member of the family has their hands around at the neck of at least one other family member, and they're squeezing hard enough to choke them over 20 years. It's hideously ugly. And part of the reason for that is all the resentment that builds up because all the fights aren't out in the open. It's like, it's really hard to establish peace with your partner because you're different, you're stupid, you're both blind, you can't argue, you can't talk, you can't think, and you're full of biases and malevolence. It's like, that's the situation. And it's really hard to take that and to forge peace out of it. It's unbelievably difficult, and it takes conflict. It takes hitting yourself up against each other. And that's actually something that produces a certain amount of dynamism in the relationship, and it requires truth. It's like, so if you're not happy, and you won't be, if you're not happy with your partner, if you're not happy with something they've done, you have to say so. But you have to say so carefully. You have to say, I'm not happy with this thing that happened. You try to make it the smallest thing you can. You don't go after the person's throat, right? First move. Smallest thing possible. And you say, it might be me. I might be stupid and ignorant, and I probably am. But as far as I can tell, this is your doing. And then you... Yeah, but you're not lying when you say that. You're not lying, and you say, look, if you can tell me that I'm stupid and miserable and ignorant and immature for being unhappy, and you can convince me, please do so. Because if I'm wrong, I need to know so I can stop being miserable. And if you think it's me and not you, please tell me, and I'll listen, because if it is me, then I could stop doing it, and then we don't have to put up with this for the next 50 bloody years.
All right. So what do you think about that little segment? If you were to summarize that for Hogatha, how would you?
Basically, just in the general sense that we have to point out each other's flaws and things that bother us about one another. We have to talk about it. We have to fight about it. And it's one of those situations where, you can't go through life thinking that you're going to find that perfect relationship, because it doesn't exist. You're going to have your problems. You're going to have your arguments. You're going to have your fights. But it's all in how you deal with it. If you love your partner enough, you're going to sit them down and say, hey, this is what bothers me, X, Y, and Z. Let's work on this.
I had actually thought about cutting out that first part of that clip, because it seemed a little bit long for the typical clips we show, but I thought it was really important, because he was talking about how he, in his clinical practice, he's seen many times when it's like the description he used about how he's seen families who have, one person's had their hand around the throat of somebody else just tight enough to strangle them over a period of 20 years. And I think we've all seen relationships like that, where it's not a quick kill. It's like a slow, steady burn that's just like the resentment and the hatred is just all boils under the surface, and nobody ever addresses it, and eventually one day it just blows up.
And it's not just with relationships, but it's also your relationships with family members as well. Because you got to think, these are people that are going to be a part of your life until you're dead. So you have to be able to maintain some sense of peace with not only your family, but your significant other. So if you can implement one into the relationship, why not do the same thing with your family?
Right on.
Oh yeah, you should always you should have a good argument, and we should be very respectful toward each other too, and I think being respectful is really calling the person out on the thing that bothers you immediately. Don't let it sit and fester and build. I mean, that's just a catastrophe waiting to happen.
All right, I've got a couple more small clips to play, and then we'll wrap it up for the night.
But if you stress the relationship and then you solve the problem, it'll snap back, and then it'll be stronger than it was, because by stressing it like that and then having it snap back because you solved the problem, you actually tighten the bonds that hold you together. Whereas if you avoid the conflict, then you can live under the pretense of peace, but it's a complete bloody lie, and you never test the relationship, and because you don't test it, you don't strengthen it.
Yeah, so that right there, he was just talking about the importance of actually having the battles, having the discussions, versus not bringing it up at all, and how by actually testing the strength of your relationship through these skirmishes and battles and whatnot, you actually have a way of making it stronger. I don't know. I can see this happen in a number of my relationships. There's a friend of mine that we got into a battle for over something a while ago. Didn't even talk to each other for a while, but we ended up eventually talking to each other, hashing it out, having the battle over it, and as a result, I feel like our relationship's stronger because of it.
That's what I was getting to earlier, is that if you can have it in a relationship, why not with your family, but not also your friends?
Yeah,
and I think
I know in this particular thing he was talking about newlyweds specifically, but I think this kind of applies with any relationship, really.
Yeah, even between us.
Well, when you argue, you ultimately
Let's go.
You have to battle it out until you come to a compromise. I mean, isn't that the thing? You both give your argument, and then you come to a compromise where you're both somewhat happy, not 100%, but it's a give and take.
But I think when you do that, I think what that bond is that you feel like you've worked something out to a point to where you feel it's almost a sense of an accomplishment, really, if you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
When the two people come together, they solve that problem, they tackle it, and then the next thing you know it's like you feel better about the relationship, and you can put it behind you. Yeah. There's no hard feelings or animosity towards one another, and and hopefully the next time you encounter another problem, you're able to tackle it just as you did the first time around.
Right on. That's great. Right on. I got one last clip here to play of that. I got to figure out a smoother way to do this, but that's okay. We'll get it figured out.
That's what I would say if you're newlyweds. Tell each other the truth. Tell each other the truth, right? Don't use it as a weapon, because that's not the truth. Tell your partner the truth.
Tell each other
whatever
the truth.
It is. All the awful truth.
Don't use it as a weapon.
And see if you can forge a relationship out of that truth. And then you'll have something that will last you through the trials and tribulations of life. You'll have the foundation You'll have laid the foundation so that you can raise children in security and with a certain amount of pleasure.
Yeah.
And
Truth is the foundation for sure.
you'll be there for each other, and you'll have someone to tie the story of your life together with the story of their life, and to make a rope that's much stronger and thicker as a consequence of that. It's all dependent on telling the truth to your partner and having the courage to engage in the conflict that will produce. That's what I would tell newlyweds.
All right. Yeah. So that's beautiful, man. I heard that clip and I'm like, man, I have to play this for the show. This is it's so dense with just raw on, like, the idea that we need to have use truth as the foundational blocks of a relationship is something that I've so intricately held on myself for so long. And it's like, anytime somebody destroys that foundation, my relationship with that person is done. I can't, like, from that, like, if you lie to me a certain amount of times, I can take a little bit of fibbing and whatnot, but if you just out and out lie to me and keep lying, even to the point where I can't tell, what's real or not, it's like, it's taken such a hard hit to the foundation of any kind of relationship that I just cannot even, I can't do it. I can't do it. It's for me, that's foundational rule number one.
Well, you're talking about foundation, and I've often told people that if you're building the foundation of a relationship, and I even posted this on the group page, build walls that protect the relationship, not divide it. Because when you get to a point to where your relationship is starting to crumble around you, you can't do anything about it. I mean, I've seen relationships, I've been in relationships where they spiral out of control.
Yeah.
And then I think back, what could I have done differently? Where did I had to take a lot of accountability in my past relationships, because obviously they didn't work out. I had to own up to my mistakes, and I really had to think back, and it's one of those life lessons where you think to yourself, okay, I've learned from this not to do it again. But then as you get older, you constantly evolve.
Yeah,
and you start to learn, okay, well, I haven't
for
encountered
sure.
this before, and it's a life lesson. But hopefully at some point you can be content with your life to an extent to where when you do have that relationship that you want, it's a solid relationship and you can move forward. So
yeah, I mean, to keep the metaphor alive, like the fights that he's talking about having in the beginning part of those clips, it's almost like, somebody throws a baseball through a window of your relationship, or somebody ends up knocking a hole in the wall of the relationship, or somebody ends up scratching the television, or whatever. But when we talk about taking a sledgehammer to the very foundation of the relationship, that's a bridge too far. Like that, at that point, it's like, hold on, the entire house is not going to stand if you keep this shit up.
Right.
And eventually it falls.
Yeah.
I mean, just straight up, it just falls.
Sometimes it doesn't happen
keeping it
right away. It happens over time.
over
It's like
time.
taking a hammer rather than a sledgehammer, and you're just chipping away at the relationship. And I find that it's interesting that when people discuss relationships, they tend to have probably some of the worst. And what I mean by that is that, you often hear your single friends talk, preaching to you about what you ought to do in a relationship. Well, my question to you is, why haven't you implemented what you're preaching to me in your own? It's funny how that works out, and
It's kind of like a fat guy giving you, no offense there, Hogatha, but it's kind of like a fat guy giving you dieting advice.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, but I think what it is, it's life experiences, it's what you go through. So, and I'm constantly trying to work on myself and not just my relationship, because if I'm not at 100% where I want to be in life, I can't devote my attention towards somebody else to give them that 100% as well. It's just not possible.
Do you have anything to add to that, Hogatha?
Well, like you were saying about, the lying and stuff, ultimately what you were getting at was trust. You just start trusting the person. And, when you don't have trust, I mean, really, what do you have?
I don't know. Hard on?
That too.
Oh, God, no, why?
I'm sorry. I can't help it. It always goes back to dicks in this podcast. No, it always goes back to dicks.
Well, men do what they do, don't they?
I see what you did there. All right, Miss Hogatha. Listen, I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah,
and
it's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
If people want to reach out to you, where can they go? Where can they find you?
You can find me on Facebook, Hogatha at Facebook, Instagram. I'm also, what else am I? Oh, I have a YouTube channel.
Okay.
I'm just everywhere, really, social media.
Right on.
Well, this is
You know,
this
not,
is
not many people have the name Hogatha either.
this
so.
is true.
That helps. That helps.
It's been a pleasure
Yeah.
talking with you and at least hearing some different point of views from your standpoint, you know, and educating people on things. That's what it's about, you know, but also trying to find that common ground of just having a dialogue and a conversation in the mix of it all.
All right.
Yeah, and I appreciate the respect. You guys are very respectful to me. Thank you. I appreciate
Absolutely.
you having me.
Well, for those of
Yeah.
you who've been watching, you've been witnessing yet another uncomfortable conversation without a condom. If you want to be a guest on the show for any of our Wednesday shows, just head on over to unframeofmind.com and hit the contact form, and you can find your way around. If you're not smart enough to find the button, then you're probably not smart enough to bring up Skype and be on the show. So go do that, and we'll be glad to have you on. You can reach out to us anywhere on any social media channel at Unframe of Mind, and stay tuned till next week, 7 p.m. Central, and we'll be here doing this again.
All right, peace.
You're listening to Unframe of Mind Show, the place to have the most mind-stretching, unprotected intellectual intercourse of your life. Your hosts battle the forces of evil by lobbing fiery balls of truth, reason, and evidence over safe room walls.